There are nights when the room is quiet and the lights are off and the silence becomes louder than any noise you heard during the day. A woman lies on her bed with no husband beside her and no arm to lean on and no voice asking how her day went. Society looks at her and says something is wrong. Heaven looks at her and says something is being formed. Please hear me with the ears of the Spirit. Loneliness is not always a curse. Sometimes it is an altar. Sometimes God removes noise so he can speak clearly. There are seasons when God deliberately allows a woman to sleep alone. Not because she is rejected and not because she is forgotten, but because he is working on dimensions within her that noise and distraction would destroy. Many women cry themselves to sleep, asking God questions they are afraid to ask people. Lord, am I not good enough? Lord, did I miss my chance? Lord, why did others find companionship and I am still here? And God is silent, not because he is absent, but because he is too close to shout. There are answers that only silence can deliver. Understand this mystery. Your value is not validated by who sleeps beside you. Your worth did not begin the day a man noticed you. And it will not end because a man has not yet stayed. Before any man ever calls you wife, heaven already called you chosen. Before any ring touches your finger, destiny already touched your spirit. A woman who sleeps alone learns things that many married people never learn. She learns how to confront her own thoughts without escape. She learns how to pray when there is no one to comfort her. She learns how to hear God when emotions are quieted. She learns how to stand when there is no shoulder to lean on. And these lessons, as painful as they are expensive. They are not given to everyone. Do you know why some relationships destroy women? Because they enter them empty and desperate and bleeding. They want a man to heal what only God can heal. They want marriage to cure wounds that require divine surgery. And so, God in his mercy delays certain things not to punish you, but to preserve you. Hear me. If you sleep alone tonight, it does not mean you are alone. The God who never sleeps is watching over you. The God who counts your tears knows every night you turned your face to the wall and cried silently. He saw you when you smiled in the day and broke down in the night, and he did not despise you. There is a strength God builds in solitude. There is discernment that grows when you are not emotionally dependent. There is clarity that comes when your heart is not crowded. Some women would have married the wrong man if God did not allow them to be alone long enough to heal and to mature and to see clearly. Do not rush your season because of pressure. Do not accept less because you are tired of waiting. Loneliness is painful, yes, but wrong companionship is destructive. One breaks the heart slowly while the other shatters destiny. And God loves your destiny too much to hand it over cheaply. There are women listening to me who think their nights are wasted. No, those nights are prayer rooms. Those tears are seeds. That silence is training. God is teaching you how to be whole before you are joined to another. He is teaching you how to find joy without dependency and peace without permission and identity without validation. A woman who has learned to sleep alone without bitterness becomes dangerous in the spirit. She cannot be easily manipulated. She cannot be easily broken. She does not beg for love. She discerns it. She does not cling to attention. She attracts honor. She knows her worth because God revealed it to her in secret places. So if you are that woman tonight, do not curse your bed. Do not despise your room. Do not envy another woman's story. God is writing yours carefully. When the right season comes, you will not enter marriage as a victim looking for rescue, but as a whole woman bringing value and strength and wisdom and peace. And hear this final truth deep in your spirit. When God is done with the work he is doing in you, your story will not look like delay. It will look like precision. Listen to me carefully. There is a dangerous misunderstanding in our generation. The belief that solitude automatically means rejection. That when a woman finds herself alone, it must be because something is wrong with her. This is not the language of heaven. God does not always use ravens to prepare people, and he does not always use companionship to build strength. Many times, the deepest work of God happens when he separates you. Not because he wants to wound you, but because he wants to form you. There are seasons when God intentionally removes certain voices and certain comforts and certain emotional support so that a woman can hear herself think and hear God speak. Solitude is not God pushing you away. It is God pulling you closer. It is in isolation that God reveals identity. Because when no one is clapping and no one is affirming and no one is staying, you are forced to confront who you really are and what you truly believe. You see, many women confuse attention with acceptance. They think being chosen by a man means they are chosen by God. But God does not build destinies on applause. He builds them on conviction. And conviction is forged in quiet places. When you sleep alone and when the room is silent and when the phone is no longer ringing, God begins to ask you questions that comfort would have distracted you from answering. There is a strength that only comes when you have learned to survive emotionally without leaning on another human being. This strength is not hardness, it is stability. It is the ability to be loved without being desperate, and to be desired without being controlled, and to be in a relationship without losing yourself. God knows that if he gives certain women relationships too early, those relationships will become idols and substitutes for healing and replacements for identity. Solitude trains discernment. When you are alone with God, your spirit becomes sensitive. You begin to notice patterns. You begin to recognize red flags. You begin to understand your own wounds. A woman who has never sat alone long enough to heal will enter relationships bleeding. And bleeding people eventually bleed on others. God delays some things to stop cycles of pain from repeating. Please hear me. Preparation does not always feel like progress. Many times it feels like emptiness. But emptiness is not useless. It is space. And God only fills what has space. He empties you of dependence so he can fill you with wisdom. He empties you of fear so he can fill you with confidence. He empties you of emotional noise so he can fill you with clarity. Some women would have married out of fear if God did not allow solitude to confront them. Fear of aging and fear of being alone forever and fear of what people will say. But God does not build futures on fear. He builds them on purpose. Solitude teaches you to wait without panic and to trust without pressure and to hope without forcing outcomes. In those quiet seasons, God teaches a woman how to enjoy her own company. This is powerful. When you no longer hate being alone, you will never settle for being poorly accompanied. You will not accept dishonor just to escape loneliness. You will not negotiate your values for temporary comfort. You will not shrink yourself to fit into spaces that cannot contain your destiny. Solitude is where God corrects wrong definitions of love. Many think love means attachment at all costs. God teaches that love begins with wholeness. When you are whole, you love freely and not from need. You give without losing yourself. You receive without becoming dependent. This is why God insists on solitude for some women, because he is more interested in their wholeness than their hurry. Do not despise this season. Do not call it delay when heaven calls it alignment. The woman who has been prepared in solitude carries a different kind of authority. She knows God personally and not secondhand. She knows peace experientially and not theoretically. She has cried, healed, learned, and grown through every season of her life. When true companionship eventually comes, it will meet a woman who is established rather than empty, discerning rather than desperate, and secure rather than searching for rescue. One of the most subtle lies modern society tells a woman is that her worth begins the day she is chosen by someone else and ends the day she finds herself alone. This destructive lie has crushed confidence, distorted identity, and pushed countless individuals into relationships they were never prepared to handle. God never designed any woman's value to be measured by her marital status, her companionship, or the presence of a ring on her finger. Before any human being ever affirmed you, heaven had already fully validated who you are. True identity must always precede any relationship you enter. If you do not truly know who you are before someone else enters your life, you will completely lose yourself the moment they leave or when they ultimately disappoint you. Many women become emotionally homeless because they build their entire sense of self inside another person. God in his infinite wisdom insists that your identity must be rooted firmly in him because he is the only one who can never walk away, never change his mind, and never grow tired of you. Your value is completely intrinsic and never needs to be negotiated. It does not increase simply because someone desires you, and it certainly does not decrease just because someone delays you or walks away. You were deeply valuable when absolutely no one noticed you, and you will remain just as valuable even if people misunderstand you. God does not value you for what you can offer someone else. He values you purely because you are His workmanship, carefully designed, intentionally formed, and purposefully placed in this world. Many women are utterly exhausted, not because life itself is too hard, but because they are constantly trying to prove themselves, trying to prove that they are lovable, trying to prove that they are enough, and trying to prove that they are worthy of staying. This is a remarkably heavy burden to carry, and God never asks you to audition for love. When you truly understand your worth in Him, you stop performing for temporary acceptance and start living from a place of deep assurance. A woman who knows her true worth will never compete with others and will never compare her personal timeline with someone else's story. She understands that God always writes unique journeys rather than cheap copies. Comparison is simply the native language of insecurity, and insecurity always thrives where identity is weak. But when your identity is firmly settled in God, comparison instantly loses its power over your mind. Marriage is never a reward for good behavior, just as singleness is never a punishment for failure. There are different seasons, distinct assignments, and unique pathways that God uses differently for every person. When you define yourself by your temporary season instead of your eternal source, you will always feel completely unstable. Seasons change, but God remains forever constant. Many relationships fail because women enter them implicitly asking a man to tell them who they are, demanding constant reassurance, constant attention, and constant validation. This creates an unfair pressure that no human being was ever designed to carry. When that man inevitably fails, withdraws, or disappoints, the woman collapses emotionally because her entire identity was tied directly to his shifting behavior. God desperately wants to free you from this heavy emotional slavery. When your identity is securely anchored in God, rejection does not destroy you. It may hurt deeply for a moment, but it can never define you. A temporary delay does not depress you because it may challenge your patience, but it never questions your eternal value. Criticism does not crush you either, as it may refine you, but it never gets to rewrite who you are. This is the unshakable stability that God wants every single woman to walk in daily. There is a profound dignity that comes from knowing you are complete in God alone. You stop begging for cheap attention. You stop tolerating blatant disrespect. And you stop shrinking your healthy standards just to keep someone else interested in you. You stop apologizing for having boundaries and stop feeling guilty for choosing deep peace over chaotic drama. This is never about pride, but about proper identity alignment. God never intended for any woman to discover her true self inside the confines of a romantic relationship. Relationships are meant to complement your life rather than complete your missing pieces. Two whole people can build something healthy and lasting, but two broken people searching blindly for identity will only create dysfunction. This is why God insists on revealing your true worth before He ever reveals your partner. When a woman truly understands her immense value in God, she becomes selective instead of desperate, waiting with quiet confidence instead of anxious panic. She trusts God's perfect timing without ever feeling left behind, knowing deeply that being alone does not mean being unloved, and that being chosen by God is the highest form of affirmation. Your worth was fully settled at creation, affirmed decisively at the cross, and secured eternally in Christ, meaning no human decision has the authority to revise what God has already established. There is a specific side of God's love that many people deeply misunderstand, and that is His willingness to delay what you desperately desire in order to protect what you carry. Many women wrongly assume that when something takes a long time, it means God is ignoring their prayers. But delay is actually clear evidence of active divine involvement. God delays relationships not because He is careless with your fragile emotions, but because He is fiercely protective of your ultimate destiny. Not every connection that feels good in the moment is actually sent by God, and not every man who shows initial interest is assigned to your future. If God allows certain doors to close or stubbornly refuses to open them quickly, it is solely because He can see what you cannot possibly see yet. He clearly sees the version of you that would eventually emerge if you entered that unprepared relationship. Seeing the deep wounds that would widen, the purpose that would be distracted, and the identity that would be compromised. Many women enter relationships carrying unhealed pain, unresolved trauma, and unmet emotional needs, blindly hoping that human love will somehow fix what only time and God were meant to heal. But real love cannot heal what raw truth has not yet confronted. God understands that if He connects you too early, that relationship will simply become a hiding place instead of a partnership, and you will use love to escape personal growth rather than using solitude to truly mature. Delay is God's gentle way of slowing you down so you never make permanent decisions driven by temporary emotions. Feelings change, physical attraction eventually fades, and initial excitement settles down, but genuine character remains. God always prioritizes inner character over fleeting chemistry, knowing that chemistry can easily blind true discernment while maturity sharpens it. Therefore, He gives you this crucial time not to punish you, but to sharpen you for what lies ahead. There are certain things God must gently remove from you before He brings the right person into your life, such as wrong patterns, unhealthy expectations, a lingering fear of abandonment, a dangerous tolerance for dishonor, and an addiction to constant external attention. If these critical issues are never addressed, you will naturally continue to attract relationships that merely mirror your unhealed wounds. God intentionally delays connection to break generational cycles that you did not start but were unfortunately born into. True protection does not always feel like love at first glance, as it can sometimes feel remarkably like frustration or like watching others move ahead while you remain seemingly stuck in the same place. But God is never racing against anyone, because He is deliberate and intentional in all His ways. He would much rather take the time to explain a delay later than have to repair massive emotional damage afterward. When God delays a relationship, He is simultaneously working behind the scenes on the heart of the other person, because true alignment requires proper timing on both sides. You may finally be ready emotionally, but the other person might not yet be ready spiritually, or you may be fully healed while they are still learning vital lessons. God patiently waits until both parts can meet cleanly without a destructive collision. This necessary delay teaches profound patience, deep discernment, and steady self-control, none of which are optional virtues in healthy relationships. Without patience, you will inevitably rush critical life decisions. Without discernment, you will ignore glaring warning signs. And without self-control, fleeting emotions will lead you astray instead of timeless wisdom. God knows that relationships merely magnify what already exists inside a person rather than fixing it. A woman who has been thoroughly processed by God does not panic in waiting seasons because she trusts that what lies ahead is worth the rigorous preparation. She does not chase cheap attention because she deeply understands her unique assignment. And she does not fear being alone because she has learned through experience that solitude did not destroy her, but instead strengthened her core. God's strategic delays are designed to position you for lasting peace rather than ongoing chaos, aligning you with authentic purpose rather than empty passion. They ensure that when connection finally arrives, it genuinely adds to your life instead of draining your spirit. God is never withholding love from you, but rather fiercely guarding your future. If God has explicitly asked you to wait, it is solely because He intends for you to arrive whole, discerning, and fully protected, rather than broken, confused, and desperate.